Today, we're diving into some really powerful, hard-won wisdom from an 88-year-old former freight train driver, a man who almost died from loneliness, seriously. But he found a way back, and what he learned, well, it can pretty much change everything. So let's get into how he did it.
First, you've got to understand just how big this problem is. Right now, 15% of men say they have zero close friends. Just look at that chart. Back in 1990, it was only 3%. That's a five-fold jump in just one generation. This isn't just a trend, it's a massive shift in our society.
And as our guide for today says, that's not just a statistic, it's a crisis. And he should know, because he became part of that number, and it nearly killed him. Let's really get into his story.
So, for him, it all fell apart after his wife of 54 years, Doi, passed away. Now, you'd think a guy who spent decades driving a locomotive all by himself would be an expert at solitude. But he was dead wrong.
He had this sudden, terrifying realization that he'd spent his entire adult life outsourcing his whole social and emotional world to his wife. Think about it. She planned the dinners, she remembered the birthdays, she kept up with their friends. He just showed up. When she was gone, his entire support system just, poof, vanished overnight. And this gets to a really important idea: emotional outsourcing. It's when you lean on someone else, usually a partner, to manage all your feelings, your social calendar, basically your whole sense of well-being. He didn't have the tools to handle being lonely because, well, he'd never had to before.
And the result was absolutely devastating. He just gave up. He lost 22 pounds, and his doctor straight up told him he was literally physically killing himself. He just sat in that chair day after day, surrounded by silence, just waiting for it to be over.
But he didn't die. Something inside him shifted. He had this fundamental light bulb moment that completely flipped his whole perspective on what it actually means to be alone. He finally truly understood this critical difference. See, solitude is just a physical thing. You're by yourself, no big deal. But loneliness, that's an emotional thing. It's a feeling of being disconnected. You can feel lonely in a packed stadium. And that means the opposite is also true. You can be totally happy and fulfilled all by yourself. So this led him to ask a really profound question, one I want you to really think about for a second. Who is the one person you are with every single moment of your life, from the second you're born to the second you die?
The answer is so simple, but it's everything. It's you. Your parents, your partner, your kids, your best friends, they come and go. But you are always there. You are the one companion you can never, ever get away from.
And right there, that was the real root of his problem. His loneliness wasn't about other people being gone. It was about the terrible relationship he had with himself. He couldn't stand being alone in his own head because it was a nasty place to be, just filled with regret and self-criticism and this feeling of failure. So at 79 years old, think about that, he started the tough job of learning how to be his own friend. And he broke the whole process down into 3 incredibly hard-won lessons. These were the 3 pillars he built his new life on. First, honesty and forgiveness, to sort of clean up the past. Second, self-respect, to build a better present. And third, purpose, to create a future he actually wanted to live in. Okay, so the key to this first step is balance. He had to face some hard truths, like admitting to himself that he'd been a mediocre father because he was always working. But the point wasn't to beat himself up. No, it was to be honest, and then, and this is the most important part, to forgive himself for being an imperfect human who was just doing the best he could at the time. You know, he says this might sound a little soft, but for a guy who worked on railroads through blizzards and derailments, he says this was by far the hardest work he ever did. He learned that being tough on the world and being cruel to yourself are 2 totally different things. Next up, he had to become a guy he could actually respect. So how'd he do it? By doing hard things. At 79, he taught himself how to cook, just using a cookbook. He started walking 2 miles every single morning, no matter what the Wyoming weather threw at him. Why? Because he made a promise to himself. And he decided, for once, he was going to keep it. And that's really the bottom line, isn't it? When you keep those little promises to yourself, you start to build self-respect. And without self-respect, being alone will always feel like a punishment. The last lesson was finding a purpose. For him, it meant building these incredibly detailed model trains down in his basement. Now, to some people, that might sound silly, but it totally absorbed his mind and his hands. It gave him problems to solve. It gave him a reason to get out of bed in the morning. The activity itself doesn't matter. What matters is that you have one. Now, here's the crazy part. All this inner work, it had this totally unexpected side effect. By finally learning to be his own companion, he completely transformed his ability to connect with other people. Think about the difference here. Before, he was desperate. He would have clung to anyone, good or bad, just to have someone, anyone, to escape himself. But afterwards, he was coming from a place of strength. He didn't need people anymore, which meant, for the first time, he was truly free to choose them. And this is the amazing paradox he discovered. He's got this group of old-timers now that he meets for breakfast twice a week, and he says he has these amazing friendships because he doesn't need them to make him feel worthy. He can just show up, be himself, with zero desperation. And this brings us right to the end of his story and to the core message he really wanted to share with the world. He says it all boils down to one fundamental choice that every single one of us has to make. He lost almost a year of his life to that recliner, just giving up. So his final piece of advice is both a warning and a hope that we can all make our decision a hell of a lot sooner than he made his. So that's the question he leaves us with. Are you going to sit in the recliner and wait to die? Or are you going to get up and live? It's not about finding somebody else to fix your loneliness. It's about deciding to get up, do the hard work of becoming your own best friend, and stepping back out into the world. The choice is yours.